Diana, thank you so much for taking part in today's Sofa Series. Lovely to have you with us. By way of introduction, so you are Senior Product Manager at ClearScore. You've got an 8-year career spanning several companies, but incredible companies as well. You started going through sort of Tesco's, you've worked at Gousto, at Thoughtful, you've been with Skyscanner as well. Great to have you on. Thank you for sort of sharing your time with us. And also a bit of a hot topic that we want to discuss today around the microeconomic conditions we're seeing, but also how companies are reacting to that and ultimately the impact that we have within product management. You are clearly a big advocate of product management. It's a passion of yours. You have your own YouTube channel, DM the PM. You spoke at a products conference in June as well, and I believe you're sort of a mentor with the Bloom program as well. So clearly this is a real sort of passion of yours, and it'd be great to get some of your thoughts on what we're seeing at the moment. So to start, wanted to throw a sort of a quick fire question to you. What are the 3 things that make you happiest in product management?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the introduction. I do hope I can help with any questions. Yes, so 3 things that make me happiest around product management. Well, the biggest one is, having your features or your ideas in production or in the hands of the customers, and the best feeling is when they're actually driving change. So when you, launch an experiment and then you get the dashboards and then you wait till it's significant and then you see that is actually positive. I think that's like a massive, you really feel good, and it's like a favorite part of being a PM. The other part that I really enjoy is any collaboration sessions and ideations. I truly like being part of a team, and I like the energy you get when it's all together trying to work around a specific problem, and then you get all the creativity and the energy. And then the last one is actually identifying problems. I'm quite an analytical person, and I do enjoy that part of product management where you have to really be curious, critical, and be actually, what is the root cause? What is actually behind all of this? And then, that kind of fills the whole circle. If you have the right problem, then the right people, then you see all the impact. So that's what I enjoy.
And obviously you spoke in detail around this that sort of topic within Product Tank in June around data-driven decisions and how to do it in the right way.
Yeah.
That's fundamentally key for you before anything else.
Yes, I think it's a big part, and I think as a product manager, you really want to identify the problems, and then data is a big part of that. So I think as long as you have the right metrics, and then you're focusing on the right problems, that's kind of a big chunk of your role there, because you really identify where your whole team should actually focus on. So I think it's a big enabler, definitely data.
Okay. And obviously, a big sort of problem we're seeing at the moment is the market is slowing down from an investment sense, from a consumer spending sense. Obviously, inflation is continuing to rise. Now, we know that companies' main sort of agenda is always going to be the sort of ROI, return on investment, and looking at profits. But what we increasingly see is in this sort of period that we're operating in, companies are changing their focus around what they were doing before. So, they might have been building a product for a period, but all of a sudden it's now our investors are pushing us to make a profit. We might cut the workforce. We take our investment away from product. We might cut a product line. We're seeing that more and more. That's what candidates coming to us and saying our frustrations is the investment in product is no longer there with certain companies. Now, you've obviously worked in a wide array of companies. I'm guessing this isn't new to you. So I just wanted to cover maybe that early stage, you're either the first PM or in the first PM team. And how are you ascertaining when you go for these interviews and meet these companies, whether what the founders say or what the stakeholders are saying at that time in reality is, we really buy into products and we're going to be very much led by our product teams, or the implications that these sorts of industry changes might have on that, and how can you manage those expectations, and how can you still try and drive the value within the organisation?
Yes, so it's a really interesting time, definitely. I think, the economy goes into cycles. So one thing to remember is that it's a phase at the moment, so things will probably change, go in and out. The other thing where you mentioned, about priorities changing in a company, I find it really strange. I think for the last 3 years or so, I think I've been in one team probably for like 3 months or 4 months. So even within a company, wow, I actually got to experience a lot of change, because again, as a business, you really want to adapt to where the value is, and you're really seeing that change. And then it could be either for, we're seeing that, we need to focus down on revenue, but also when they're scaling again, they're moving people to be like, well, we found this other new opportunity. So I do think change is quite a big part of, being a PM. And I guess this is where it's like, yeah, it's very interesting when you're first like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, it's really interesting that what you have as a PM is a lot of the mindset and the way you approach things, because you could expect to be in different products even within a company. So I think that's even more important, to be like, how do you learn very quickly what the product area is? How do you identify what the value is? Like, are you able to identify anything like quick wins, or being able to quickly gauge or build a relationship with stakeholders? And coming back to your question around being like maybe like the first PM team, I think you have to really consider the situations even the stakeholders and the founders are in. So first of all, they're really close to engineering team, and they have already built a product that is successful. It is, driving money. So now they want to hire people because they want to 10x that, or they really want to amplify it. So when you come in, I do feel like there's always that pressure, or that not skepticism, but you always kind of have to prove, why am I here, and why am I, what value am I going to add? And then what I would say is, don't jump to driving too many new change or processes, even if their processes are maybe not efficient. Too much change, they're probably not going to accept it. They want to, I believe there's a lot of you have to show the value first before you teach. I don't think it's good to go in and it's well, all teams do this, or in my previous team we all did this. Now we're going to introduce this 5-step process, and it's going to take you 2 months before you see the value of your product. So I think it's a lot of really understanding what the processes are currently, because they obviously have a process, a way of doing it, and then really find the gaps in those, or the consequences. A lot of the times those companies will be there's been a lot of things happening at the same time, because everyone would want different things, and then they will also probably wait quite a bit. So you also see there's the definition of the features, or the scope is not there. Mm-hmm. So they might be defining something, but it takes them a really long time to see it in production, or it's not really exactly what they want. So then you can come in and be like, okay, well, I can actually help you define solutions better, or help you build this in you'd really need to think about how anything you're doing or introducing going to show them value. So you have to show the value and ultimately help them get those outcomes. So a lot of the times, it's really easy to come up with ideas and be like, I want this done, but what you can't really map that back to is outcomes. To be like, okay, product can really help to be what is the metric you're trying to drive, and work with stakeholders, and then be a really great way to build trust. That's part of it. When you're the first team there, you're under pressure, everyone's skeptical of what you're really going to do. So you really want to find those quick wins where you find something that's really valuable for someone, be oh, I really want to drive or increase conversion. And then you'll be okay, if this is what you want, and they might have loads of ideas, you kind of take one of the ideas, or do it faster, and then show actually by putting this product thinking on top of it, we actually were able to deliver it in 2 weeks, because the team is focused and they could do this, release this, and it actually has the value that we wanted in production. And then you kind of, every time you have to like apply a process and then explain, okay, this worked, this is why it worked, this is why we're going to be doing things differently from now on. I guess the signs are people really open to change? Are you actually able to drive those things? Because another thing is you might have, you know, your quick wins, or you might have your proposals, and you might have a way to say, well, actually we need a prioritized backlog, and those are the reasons for it. And, you know, but you need like the rest of the business. The other thing with founders is, depend on the founder, but like saying no, I found it that if you have the rest of the stakeholders bought into the process or the change, then they will also be open to it, because all they want is like the company to be happy. So as long as you have like the closest people you work with from the business, you know, highlighting the value you're adding and being happy with the new processes, and they're seeing, you know, impact on the metrics or to customers, then you're starting to like, you know, gain more of their trust.
And obviously that, by getting the value, and obviously you mentioned wider stakeholders also trusting what you're trying to do, the issue that you may see with the founder, is that sometimes a control issue where it's hard for them to relinquish control? Or is it just that, you know, these people are incredible minds, they work at, you know, breakneck speed, they're under a lot of pressure? Is it just that they just need to be persuaded that what you're trying to do is the right thing?
I think it's like a mix. I mean, you know, they have driven the company already to a really great place. So it's like, you know, there's obviously a lot of, they really understand the customers. Everyone I've worked with, they really understand the customer quite well. So there is a question of, I guess, sometimes it's like understanding where the idea is coming from, like what problem is it solving. But it's also, I guess, yeah, some people do have this like control. I want my ideas to go through, but that's the differentiator of like, if it is control because they think their idea is the best, that's a good test to be like, well, actually, you know, if you understand behind it and like the reasoning, and then you tell them, well, actually, I'll take the problem away from you and I'll work with the team to come up with the solution. And if it is the same solution, you know, great, but let's look at the problem. They're open to empowering you to be like, you know, I believe this is a really important thing, you'll consider it. Or if you have arguments to say, well, actually, we're working on something else. If they're open to any level of like negotiation, I think that's where they start getting buy-in into what you're trying to do. And that's a really good sign of they would actually want product management as a sustainable change. Because there's always this risk of, again, with all the revenue challenges, is like, are people bringing in, or in the past they bought in product hoping for this like, yes, you're going to drive this massive change because, I don't know, you're like business minded, and then, you know, they don't actually believe in how this is going to fit with the whole culture. I think people really underestimate the fact that it's more of a cultural change and a mindset than it's just a business process. It's a bit different than agile delivery, you know, it's like, that's also a mindset, but it's more like, we introduce the processes, we're pretty much done. With product, you kind of like, well, you're going to drive a whole business change to think about it in a different way. So I think if you start seeing that they don't allow time for people or other, you know, stakeholders in the business, let's say you have a really good relationship and you drive some change with them, and then they feel like, you know, they have a conversation with you, but then they have to have a different conversation with their own stakeholders or other people in the leadership team. Well, you know, that means that maybe as a company they don't actually allow everyone to take on that mindset. So that's another thing to say, well, actually, you know, are there double standards? To be like, as a PM you can do all these things, but as a marketeer you can't apply the same principles because we want you to do it this way. And that's where you kind of start noticing the actual openness companies have.
So obviously as companies are maybe sort of concerned around what's happening externally at the moment, and trying to sort of change the position of the business, the need for profit becomes even greater, and the company become more ROI focused. As a PM, how does that impact you, and how would you sort of deal with that in your team and obviously with stakeholders that you work with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think from my side, I kind of always wanted to move to different company sizes to get closer to having that accountability over the value you're driving for the business and for customers. So I really tried to like find, you know, the perfect combo of a PM where it's like I solve a great important problem and then that leads to some like value that ultimately, you know, helps the business metrics. And because I always strive for that, I don't think it makes an immediate like impact to me. Of course, there'll be more pressure to find those like super great ideas, to be like, oh yes, if you had it hidden somewhere, please, now is the time. Which generally is, you know, if there were ideas and quick wins, and this is probably the word that always, or the two words that come around, it's like, are there any quick wins we can do? And probably teams would have done them by now. But yeah, so I don't think I think it really focuses you as a PM to have that roadmap of short-term changes you can drive and like long-term strategy. So maybe if your roadmap generally is like 70% long-term things because you're like evolving an experience and 30% short-term, then that balance will change. So you'll have to like focus more on the value add, like the using what you currently have. I think in this situation, like, you know, the focus will switch into making sure your team is delivering at speed. I think that becomes a lot more important to have that cadence of being able to release things, test them, learn, because that's going to get you like faster to your answer. I think, you know, viability is it is part of like that product manager, you know, make something valuable, viable and feasible. But I think sometimes you kind of lose track of viability because we focus a lot on the customer problem. But it is a part of it. We want to make sure that you're building something that, you know, does link back to ROI. And in those situations you have like, as I said, maybe your like product discovery process will be shorter, or you have to think about ways in which the time you spend on defining an idea, it's a lot shorter because you want to just learn at a really kind of fast pace. And the other thing about the situation, which I kind of enjoy on a certain level, and obviously not every day because every day becomes too much, but you actually, you know, if companies do it properly, when those things happen, you want to reduce the number of priorities you have.
Okay.
Because if you are reducing the priorities and say, well, actually, you know, we have less people or we're going to become more lean, you also expect strategy to be, we're only focusing on those 2 to 3 things. Because you can't have that alongside, oh, your backlog is the same, but please deliver faster or better. So you want to see the business making that change as well. So if you do have those 1 to 3 priorities, you then kind of want as a PM to remove as many blockers as possible. So the company can't afford to work in silos anymore, because it's like, well, those 3 priorities, we should get all the right people involved in those things. And then I think as a PM, you want to also share that pressure out to, like, you know, it's a shared problem. You know, you want to have like those sessions where you get your engineers involved and be like, actually, let's look at the current journey, or let's look at, you know, this problem we have, how are we going to like solve it? So ultimately, I do believe that, you know, limited time, limited resources to some level does drive innovation.
Yeah.
But I think the companies need to have a balance between how long you run there for. So I think it works for like a set period of time, but that can be a strategy for like 3 years. I think if it's prolonged, that's where it starts having a lot more impact. Yeah, you can do all of this, but if you're focused, then you can drive more of that collaboration and really focus on, for everything you're doing, a lot stricter on the ROI you will actually drive from it. So that viability just becomes a bigger prioritization metric. But again, everything in balance. If it goes on for too long, then yeah, as a PM, you probably won't learn as much and you won't actually evolve, and you run out of ideas and you run out of quick wins, and also you build a lot of tech debt That's the other one that people really forget about. It's like you build a lot of tech debt that then engineers are like, we have to stop building this, you have to go sustainable.
So, as a PM, what is your biggest failure and how do you tend to overcome adversity?
So when this was in my first few years at Tesco, and I was given the opportunity to build this like task service product. It was like really exciting. It was really smart. It was like all about making operations just a lot more efficient and driving it through like, I don't know, a smarter algorithm. It's like, you know, really cool development thing that, you know, it's like not many PMs get the opportunity, and I was really excited about it. And I was working with a third party, and I was doing a lot of discovery. And the biggest failure for me is like the fact that I haven't actually managed to even define a slice of it. It was like, it was really exciting. It was really ambiguous. It was like a massive space. And in the end, I didn't actually manage to like, you know, frame it in a way that I would be like, okay, this is the overall problems, and then this is how I'm going to slice it, or this is what I'm going to prioritize. So that was my first experience with this like ambiguous product discovery space. And yeah, I managed to like, you know, I spent probably 3 months on it, and then I was like, yeah, I managed to get to the place where it was like, we also didn't have the data there, so like the data wasn't in the right place, but I still think I could have probably done a slice of it that would have been in value, like, you know, actually being able to test. So that is my biggest failure, and the reason why, well, I've learned a lot from it. I've really learned.
So that was probably quite early on in your product career.
But I was very happy about the opportunity. So this is it, you know, you have this like, you really want to do it, and then I noticed the gap. But what helped is then I got a good understanding of there is this other ambiguous space. You know, as a PM that you're like, maybe you're like early on, but you see you're delivering stuff, you're really good at prioritizing, you have your stakeholder management on point, and you're like driving change. There's this other ambiguous space that if you haven't, you think you can do it, and that's what I thought. I was like, no, I think I can handle this. And then I learned this needs a different set of skills that I don't have. So yeah, if I go back, that's one opportunity, is like, can I have that back? Now that I know what the space is, I can tackle it again. Yeah. But yeah, that was the one that I feel like missed out on.
And on that piece, did it really test your resilience at the time? Did it make you question whether being a product manager is the right career path for you?
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely parts of that, and you know, you again, that passion for driving change and creating something tangible that then you can test, you know, it's a big part of being a product manager. So it was definitely, I remember it was really hard, and then I think even like giving up on it, I was like, have I done the right thing? Is this the right conclusion? Again, do I have the right skills? I had good support from my manager at that time, and then we did kind of go through the reasoning behind it, and that's why we kind of paused it. There were quite a few gaps, and they're like, okay, it's not the right thing. But I think that's where I know if I had more of that experience. So then I thought, I was like, I'm not really good at this. I don't really know what I'm doing. But then I was given a different project that really helped. So I think, you know, the way my manager managed it to be like, okay, here's another piece of work that you can focus on, and that transition then help gain some of that confidence back. The
support network is key.
Yeah,
exactly.
Definitely.
Okay. What advice would you give yourself in products if you were starting out all over again? If this was Diana day one, what would you maybe do differently?
I would do one thing that I did do in the past, and I was again very excited to be a product manager, and you know, you learn about all these like frameworks and all this like great product, and all you want to do is like apply it as soon as you can. You know, you learn about something and you're like, oh, that makes sense, I want to really apply this in my role, and I did that, and I wanted to drive a lot of change all at once. And I would say focus on, you know, smaller changes. You know, making progress is more important than introducing the new thing. Focusing on, you know, defining the metrics and defining the problems, or like understanding your space is like a lot better, rather than just being like, oh, I want to introduce all of this. It's like, I think having the expectation of you don't have to change the world all at once, because that's not like, becomes too chaotic. So you want to have a more structured approach. And I would say curiosity is your best friend. It really helps with understanding the space, and I truly believe that that's one of the traits that as a PM you can always rely on, just to be curious of how does this work, how does the other thing work, and the other one is I guess don't take it personally. I think when you get very passionate about the problem and you want to solve it, or you want to like focus on this, it can take over, but it's like, well, it's not the reflection on you being a really good PM. There's also a lot of other factors. So again,
things at play,
yeah, when you want to drive all of this and you want to introduce all these changes, and you want to kind of go really quick, I think it's like it's okay to go slower and like take a more structured approach, but also be very clear on there's a lot of things that can influence the outcome of a product, and it's not all on just the PM or on you to like drive everything end to end.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking part in the Sofa series. It's been fascinating learning more about what you've been up to, and maybe sort of the challenges that you find, and especially maybe what we're dealing with at the moment. What's up? What's next for you? So you've obviously got your DM the PM YouTube channel. Have you got anything coming up in the future around sort of talking events, or in terms of your mentorship program?
No, so at the moment I'm a mentor on Bloom. I'm still going with that, and no, it's just my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn channel. I like trying to keep them as active as I can, and sharing more about product, and also I guess as I learn and as I go through experiences, I really want to share more of actual examples. But no, at the moment I don't have any events, but yes, if you know of anything or you're interested in, please do get in touch, and I would love to get involved.
Yeah, well, you are one of the most active people on
Thank
LinkedIn,
you.
so
Thank you.
I think that will only grow as it goes, and it's obviously great to speak to people that are so passionate about this space and clearly have a huge amount to add. So thank you so much, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.